we need to understand the physical environment that we live in is a significant determinant of health status and well-being of humans. Why do I say that? Well, again, looking at the World Health Organization data, in 2016, the World Health Organization mentioned that 23% of all global deaths are linked to the environment. So what does it mean? It means roughly during that year, 12.6 million deaths which happened in the world were due to diseases and accidents caused by environmental risk factors. So we need to understand the importance of the environment as a determinant of our health status and well-being. This is just some evidence that I am showing you now. And then why is it important to our region? Because you can see out of these 12.6 million deaths, the greatest burden come from the Asian region. And most importantly, 3.8 million deaths in this particular year has happened in the Southeast Asian region. So which means that is our region, that is where Sri Lanka is. And of course, the Asia region is contributing to around 7.3 million deaths. And what are these environmental risk factors? Air pollution. Air pollution is a significant risk factor when it comes to health status and well-being. Of course, there are so many others, but I won't go into a lot of details due to the time limitations. But certainly you can see climate change is another environmental risk factor. So as chemicals, we need to understand that chemicals are significantly affecting our health status and well-being. And of course, plastics are also chemicals. Now, coming back to our topic today about plastics, plastics, again, they are chemicals, and I suppose we all know that it is used very commonly in the whole world, as well as in Sri Lanka. Usually, it is from crude oil, and there are so many types of plastic. So but then what we have to understand is plastics are also chemicals. Now, this slide actually, I'm trying to show you. Most of the plastics are made from these three raw materials: petroleum, coal, and cellulose. Petroleum and coal are non-renewable energy sources, but cellulose, of course, renewable. So this is about the plastics, but plastics are everywhere. We need plastics, but at the same time, plastics cause a lot of damage, not only in terms of the environmental pollution, but certainly when it comes to health, social, economic. So there are so many facets of this. I would say plastics, mainly due to mismanagement of these plastics, including the plastics waste. Now, there are so many categories of plastics also. I'm sure you are sort of, familiar with these things. And this is the problem. Plastics in the environment. Plastics in water bodies. Plastics on the land. And of course, you can see all these things. These are some of the photographs. So this has become a huge issue, not only internationally, but of course in Sri Lanka too. Now, Uh, just to very briefly tell you as to why we must consider about the plastics. They say the plastic production is more than 460 million tons. And then, of course, most importantly, plastics have transformed consumer behavior significantly. So that is very important for us to understand. And some of these problems actually are due to this fact. And on the other hand, the life cycle impact, starting from the extraction of these raw materials up until production to disposal, of course, is creating a lot of environmental problems and associated health issues, social issues, and then economic issues as well. And most importantly, the crisis is accelerating. So that is why we need to be mindful of this fact. And that is why we should find ways and means of managing this issue. And I think it's very important for us to try and identify as to why this crisis is accelerating also in order to find better interventions. Well, when it comes to the plastic reality in Sri Lanka, I suppose even in Sri Lanka, the per capita plastic use is rising. With even now, if you just think of some other modalities, I would give you just one example. Now we are into online ordering, so you can understand. There is always this plastic usage, the packaging part, and even online when you order something, the plastic. Plastics are used as packaging material. So, the consumer behavior is changing. So, therefore, with all these advancements and the technologies, you can understand the consumption of plastics is also slowly, I would say not slowly, but, gradually increasing. And most importantly, mismanaged waste. So that is a huge problem even in Sri Lanka. The plastic waste management is not satisfactory and is creating a lot of environmental as well as health and social and economic impacts as well. And then the evidence that is being generated, not like previous times, now we are so concerned about the microplastics. Actually, the evidence or the research body is growing, and now scientists know that these plastics, create a lot of adverse health impacts or negative impacts, and then still it is being researched because still we really don't know the whole issue. But at least we have identified so many aspects, and we know this is a huge problem. And of course, even like, several sectors, even like the health sector, we are using a lot of plastics. And of course, the local authorities, the waste management. So like, there are issues with, the plastic waste management in Sri Lanka. Therefore, it's very important that we consider these aspects and then try and find out solutions so that our health is not affected and the environment is not polluted and we don't have the other impacts that I was describing. So therefore, what we have to understand is plastics are not always bad. We need plastics, but then we need to manage throughout its life cycle in a sound manner so that we will have less impacts. Now, just to very briefly tell you as to how these plastics would enter our daily lives. I mean, we know that food packaging, the lunch sheets, of course, in certain other countries, we don't have the lunch sheets, but we have the lunch sheets, and then the bottles, plastic bottles, and even all these plastic packaging material, food and all. So all those takeaway containers, they are made of plastics. cosmetics and microbeads packaging. Now, these industries are sort of, blooming. So therefore, there is frequent usage of all these things by the public. So therefore, you can see the amount of plastics that is coming into the environment has increased significantly. And of course, the household items and cleaning supplies, synthetic clothing, microfiber, and medical and personal care items, as I mentioned. So, very briefly, what happens to plastics in the environment? Actually, these are the issues because now, when plastics are thrown to the environment, when they are not, especially when the waste is not managed properly, plastics in the environment will be broken down into micro and nanoplastics. So these are very, very small particles, and unfortunately, these particles will get onto the bodies of the humans as well as other animals, creating a huge problem in terms of their health and well-being, and of course, biodiversity as well. Then the other problem is it is persisting for centuries because these things will degrade at least very, very slowly. And with that, of course, will give rise to a lot of negative impacts. Then, especially these microplastics and the nanoplastics, they are being transported through air, soil, and water, and of course bioaccumulation in food chain. So all these properties we need to understand is affecting health of human beings as well as other organisms. Now, pathways of human exposure. Now, plastics, these microplastics, we are inhaling these things because I will, tell you how we are getting these into the atmosphere. And of course, ingestion, contaminated food, water, so all that is getting the plastics into our bodies. Contact, especially skin exposure, because now see, we are using so many items, maybe cosmetics and personal care items with plastic. So maybe through contact also we are getting these things into our bodies, and especially waste management. When that is not happening properly, even the occupational groups, the municipal solid waste handlers, and some of these e-waste recyclers who are into informal activities, so all of them, they are exposed to these plastics. And of course, prenatal. So that is what we need to be careful about, mindful. Especially these things can get into even the growing fetus through the placenta. Unfortunately, a placenta is a great barrier, but certain chemicals, even certain things like mercury, can cross the placenta. So that is unfortunate thing because then the growing fetus, even before the baby is born, can be affected. And through breast milk also, the plastics can get into the infants. Of course, inhalation, we know urban air contains microplastics because there is a lot of burning happening. And then from indoor air sources as well, and waste burning. So these are some of the ways the plastic particles get into the air. Now, I would like to draw your attention to some of these issues, environmental issues, and then the health impacts. Now, we know that mismanagement of plastic waste is creating air pollution. Now, if you can see this, you would sometimes think this is, the fog or the mist, right? Sometimes you see this not so, pronounced, but sometimes you can see the environment is not so clear, right? This can be due to particulate pollution, including plastic particles in the air. If you see this in Colombo, maybe sometimes, like what happened yesterday, there can be certain climatic and weather conditions creating this kind of a thing. But unfortunately, especially we know that from November to like February, March, you can see some amount of particulate pollution even in most of the cities in Sri Lanka. So basically air pollution, and this is pronounced because of transboundary air pollution. But what I want to highlight is this is a significant problem.